but I think Curry will really be carrying this team. And as a result, I think he's going to put up numbers like 2016. So I just think he can do what he did in 2016 again, and he will remind everyone just how damn good he is. This intro is basically a disclaimer. These are not necessarily things that I think will happen. They are more so just things that I think are possible that they could happen, that many others just don't feel that way. So the title will be Bold Predictions, but it'll be more like bold predictions of possibilities that just aren't being talked about as possibilities, I guess. The 2019-20 season, I believe, will be the best one of my time as an NBA fan, especially since 2017. The last 3 years have felt like they were already decided. Now, obviously, that wasn't the case in the finals that just happened, but let's all be honest, the result wouldn't have been the same if Kevin Durant's Achilles didn't jiggle like Jello. So I am very interested to see what happens this season, and I wanted to give some bold potential predictions for what could happen, with the help of some of you from Twitter. So let's get into the predictions. Before we start, I wanted to quickly promote my podcast. Me and Mojo99 have started a podcast called the Hoopscast, where we talk all things NBA. In the last episode, we talked about the Russell Westbrook trade, as well as made some power rankings. And in episode 5, which will be coming out this Saturday, we're going to have SDC on the podcast as a guest. So be sure to go check out that. Link will be in the description and in the card above. Real quick, prediction 1 through 3, I would be actually pretty confident betting some money on those things happening. 4 and 5 are pretty out there, and I would not bet money on them happening, but I could also see it maybe happening. So with that said, let's get into prediction number 1. Markelle Fultz breaks out on the Magic this year, and looks like the future star that he was supposed to be. Markelle has had a rough start to his career so far, as we should all very well know. He's honestly had one of the weirdest, if not the weirdest, starts to an NBA career ever. He's been in the league for 2 years now, and we still have no idea what's going on with him, in terms of injury and with his jump shot. But this year, with the Orlando Magic, Fultz is going to have an opportunity to come back and be what he's supposed to be. I don't expect Fultz to be a good shooter this year. I don't even expect him to be an okay one. But shooting is not everything. Outside of shooting the ball, Fultz is still very solid. He's a really good playmaker, a really good ball handler and finisher at the rim, as well as a capable defensive player. He is a good player outside of shooting the ball. His shooting is just so damn atrocious that it makes you think that he just sucks in general. But I think the change of scenery from the Sixers to the Magic will do a whole lot of good for him. On the Sixers, Fultz had to be a shooter, especially playing with Ben Simmons. Also the fact that he was on a team that was trying to win now. The Sixers couldn't afford to wait around for Fultz to figure it out, couldn't throw away possessions for him to get some in-game runs. The Magic, on the other hand, while being a competitive team, having made the playoffs last year, are not quite at championship contender levels, or anywhere close really. So they can give him a good amount of run. And I think Fultz, given that opportunity, as well as having some real spacing around him, he can break out to be what he was projected to be coming into the draft. And he can look like what he looked like in the Sixers Summer League. And while I don't expect the jump shot to be great, I don't expect it to be double pump at the free throw line level bad. And I think he can eventually come back around to being a good, even really good jump shooter with some time and some health. Number 2, the Dallas Mavericks make the playoffs. In the Western Conference, it is hard as fuck to make the playoffs, but I think a duo of Luka and Kristaps Porzingis is enough to get the 8th seed in the Western Conference. The Mavericks have a starting lineup of DeLon Wright, who is a solid point guard all around, Luka Doncic, who I kind of expect to have a bit of a sophomore slump, especially sharing the ball with Kristaps this year, but I've been very wrong about Luka in the past, so take it with a grain of salt. Then we have Tim Hardaway Jr., who I think gets way too much shit. A lot of people call him a J.R. Smith clone as a way to discredit him, but that's not really an insult because J.R. Smith was a pretty damn good player for a while. He won 6th Man of the Year in 2013, averaging 18 points per game. Hardaway is a similar player. Both take some reckless shots, but they also both make some reckless shots. Everyone just remembers that 2018 finals moment and thinks that J.R. Smith was trash for his entire career. At power forward, we have Kristaps Porzingis, someone I think many people might have forgot just how good he is. In the 2017-18 season, Porzingis was averaging 23 points per game, and he was a first-time All-Star. He also averaged 2.5 blocks per game, shooting 40% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. Kristaps is one of the best three-point shooters in the league, arguably, and I would probably say he is the best shooting big man in the league. He's a phenomenal rim protector. His one issue comes with rebounding the ball. Despite being 7'3", his career best rebound average was 7.3 rebounds a game. But Luka is a good rebounder for his position. Wright is 6'5", so he's a good rebounder for his position. And their starting center, Dwight Powell, averages 9 rebounds per 36, so his rebounding issues aren't too bad on this team. Another thing with Porzingis' All-Star season is he did that with pretty minimal help. He had some okay shooters and 2 point guards who were capable playmakers in Jarrett Jack and Trey Burke, but capable is really the best word you can use to describe them. In Dallas, we have Luka, who is a great playmaker, and Wright, who in 20 games with the Memphis Grizzlies averaged over 5 assists per game. Normally, a 20-game sample size wouldn't be a big deal, but it's important because this is the first time in his career that he got big minutes, which he'll be getting in Dallas. Having a big-time scorer next to Kristaps will help him also. It will keep defenses from focusing on Kristaps alone, so this duo will be fantastic, and when you consider how good the Kings were last year, just barely missing out on the playoffs, I think it's pretty fair to assume that the Mavericks can be a little bit better than that. Number 3, Devin Booker asks for a trade and gets traded to the Atlanta Hawks. This one is specific, I know, but I think there's a pretty fair chance of it happening. If you have watched episode 4 of the Hoops Cast, check it out if you haven't. Finish the video first. You would know that in that episode I put the Phoenix Suns as the second worst team in the league. Here is a clip to explain my reasoning. Number 29. I have the Phoenix Suns. And here's the thing about the Suns. I think they're actually semi-talented, but I have thought that for the last 2 years, and every time the Suns have been dog shit. So I'm just going to say, fuck what my thoughts are on the roster. The Suns are always garbage, so I'm just going to put them there. Okay. Now, is that the most sound, well-reasoned thought process in the world? No, not even close. But can you blame me for feeling that way? For the last 2 years, especially last year, I expected the Suns to be at least a somewhat respectable NBA team, and both times they were at the bottom of the league. So I think a similar thing will happen. Devin Booker gets fed up and asks for a trade. And I think the Atlanta Hawks are the number 1 team to land him. After this year's draft, the Hawks are stacked with assets. They could send Herter, Cameron Reddish, and DeAndre Hunter to the Hawks for Devin Booker as well as a pick, or you could just make it Herter, Cam, and a few first so you don't have to lose Hunter. I would like to keep him as the long-term 3. If you do that, your starting 4 can be Trae Young, Devin Booker, DeAndre Hunter, and John Collins. And if I'm Atlanta, Hunter is the one that I try to keep around the most for the defensive side of the floor, as well as the fact that he is the most sure thing from this draft. Reddish is a good defender, but offensively he might struggle, and he might never be too efficient of a shooter for his career. Hunter can at the very least be a Robert Covington type of player, and you want that in your starting lineup, especially if Trae Young and Devin Booker are your backcourt. If you're Atlanta, you can't pass that up, and if you're Phoenix, you're not going to get a whole lot of better offers. There are not a whole lot of teams in the league that are in the position to trade for Devin Booker or have the assets to trade for Devin Booker. The Hawks are the best match, so I think a Devin Booker trade to the Atlanta Hawks is something that could happen this year. Number 4, Derrick Rose is an all-star in the East. Now remember what I said at the start. I said that number 4 and number 5 were unlikely, so just keep that in mind. In Detroit, I think Derrick Rose can return to all-star form, assuming that his three-point shot comes back. Because as much as I would love to ignore it, I can't ignore the fact that he shot terribly from 3 in the last 20 games of the season. But in Detroit, Rose has a chance to be the number 2 shot creator on this team behind Blake Griffin, and probably the number 2 shot taker. Drummond gets his shots from the flow of the offense as well as offensive rebounds, but he isn't a big-time shot taker, and I think Rose is better than Reggie Jackson, and he could quickly become the starter because of that. And when you look at the East, there isn't a whole lot of competition at the guard spots. There are really only 2 guarantees, and those are Kyrie Irving and Kemba Walker, and Kyrie gets injured so often there's a chance that he misses the game. The East is also weak in the star department in comparison to the Western Conference. So I think Rose has a shot for those reasons. I think he could average 20 and 6 this year on decent shooting splits given the right circumstances. And last but not least, number 5 is kind of insane, so don't hold too much of a grudge on it because I don't think it will happen, but it's possible. Number 5, Donovan Mitchell is an MVP candidate. Now, I don't think that Donovan Mitchell is really an MVP level player, but given the circumstances, I think he can put up really good numbers on a really good Utah Jazz team. I expect Mitchell's scoring efficiency as well as production to be a lot better this year thanks to Mike Conley. Now, a prediction that I will make that I wouldn't call bold is that this will be Mitchell's first All-Star season, and I think he'll win Most Improved Player. But I could see Mitchell putting up 25 to 27 points as well as 5 rebounds and 5 assists this year on good shooting splits with good defense as well. Not the most amazing numbers in the world, but if the Jazz are a top 3 seed, which I think they can be, Mitchell could be 3rd in the race as a dark horse for MVP simply from being the face of a really good team. I could see him being like what Paul George was this year, where everybody recognized that he was great and gave him the respect of making him a top 3 MVP candidate, but everyone knew he wasn't going to win the actual award. Now, I know this is a stretch, but I do believe it is possible. Conley on the Jazz means that Mitchell gets to become a far more off-ball player. A good percentage of Mitchell's shots in the last 2 years have come off of the dribble, and they've been contested because the defense has really only had to focus on him. Because of that, he's struggled with his efficiency. But with a 17-7 guy who can create shots for Mitchell, an efficient shooter and 20-point per game scorer last year with Bojan Bogdanovic, and the spacing from Joe Ingles as well, Mitchell will have all the room in the world to create his own shot, and he will have a point guard that can create shots for him, while not being a spacing issue while Mitchell actually has the ball like Ricky Rubio was. So those are my 4 bold predictions. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to check out the Hoopscast, link will be in the description. Like and subscribe, and cue the outro music.